library. So I'm going to try to stick to a 20-minute presentation and turn it over to Vicki afterwards to talk to you about the archives. Today, my presentation, I'm going to talk about the Indiana Archives and Records Administration, just a general overview for you. Then I'm going to tell you about my position as the Records Management Liaison and what I can do for you. Then I'll give an overview on records management and talk about the different retention schedules and forms that you will most likely be using. And then at the end, I'll tell you a little bit about the County Commission of Public Records. So what is IARA? The Indiana Archives and Records Administration assists state and local governments in the cost-effective, efficient, and secure management of governmental records by providing services throughout the life cycle of records, including creation, use, records inventory and scheduling, storage, and disposition. IARA was formerly known as the Indiana Commission on Public Records. It was officially renamed in 2015, so it's been roughly 6 years since our name change. So if you knew us as the ICPR, we are now IARA. And on the slide, there are the different divisions for IARA. I'll talk more about records management division, specifically the county local governments, which you as public libraries fall under. The State Records Center primarily works with state government agencies, providing temporary storage and document circulation for inactive records. And then Vicki will talk to you more about the Indiana State Archives. The Electronic Records Program advises government agencies on the management of electronic record formats and systems. They also develop policies and procedures for e-records, and I will talk a little bit about electronic records later on. And then they also transfer and accession archival electronic records to the archives collections. The Conservation Lab restores and repairs legally and historically valuable records. They also serve as a resource for disaster preparedness and emergency planning, and they advise government agencies on proper records preservation methods. The State Imaging and Microfilm Services Lab performs preservation microfilming of critical records, and with experience in handling delicate and/or damaged records. They also convert critical microfilm and paper-based records to digital access formats as technology and work environments change. And they preserve digital records by writing files to microfilm as a secure backup file to content management systems. And then forms management, they assign master numbers to all official state government agency forms, both paper and electronic. They maintain a master file folder and database record for each state form. And they also design forms for agencies and analyze, approve the design of agency created forms. And I'll be talking about two state forms that forms management has designed for you. And then lastly, the OCPR, the Oversight Committee on Public Records. They approve schedules for government agencies. They also vote on policies and administrative rules for IARA, and they are designated by Indiana Code. So that's just a little bit about IARA. So like I said, we have two records management sections, the state and county local. I'll be talking just about the county local right now. We provide assistance and education for Indiana government offices in managing, retaining, preserving, and disposing of public records. We develop and update records retention schedules that balance the storage needs of the government office with state or federal retention requirements, as well as the need for preservation of documents with permanent historical value. We also have a few training modules and that are online. We have a lot of different publications and policies. I've mentioned 3 there. The County Local Records Custodian Handbook, which I believe was created last summer. It's very helpful, has a lot of information on what to do with records management, what is a record, what isn't, how do you dispose of them, that sort of thing. I use it on a daily basis, so I highly recommend the handbook. And then policy 20-01 and 20-02 are actually 2 electronic records policies, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. And then we also have different records and forms coordinators, and we are here to answer any questions that you have. So as your records management liaison, I just wanted to give you a background on me. I was hired in June of 2020 during the pandemic. I have a background in archives. I was an archivist for about 6 or 7 years before I came here for records management. I have degrees in history and archival studies, so I'm excited to be in records management now because it's slightly different than archives, but in the same area. So when I was hired, it was to help only county and local government agencies. And I was also hired to do a lot of state travel, to go to the different counties and help whichever agency was looking for help with their records management. So unfortunately with COVID, I couldn't do that, but I am actually going to start traveling in August. So if you want me to visit your county, let me know. I'd be happy to come out. I'll be traveling on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, and then like I said, I'm here to answer your records management questions. And with the pandemic and my lack of ability to travel, we were trying to come up with different means of communication so I could reach you all more easily. So for, I guess, about the past year, I've been doing a weekly email blast on Monday mornings with just different topics on records management. I'll send an update when a retention schedule has been updated. I'll talk about personnel records. It's really whatever comes to mind, or if I have a lot of agencies asking me about payroll records, I'll send an email about that just to update everyone. So if you would like to get on that email subscription, feel free to email me at the CTY email address on the slide and just say subscribe me and I'll know what you're talking about. And then another way we are trying to be more accessible to you is I am actually starting to do a monthly Microsoft Teams chat. So if you want to talk to me or type in the chat or talk to me online, we're going to do that once a month. We're doing our test run this afternoon, but those monthly chats will be the last Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m. So if you'd like to join me for those, feel free to jump in. All right. So what is records management? In general, records management for state and county local agencies is loosely defined as taking care of government records and retaining them under the requirements set out by the state of Indiana and federal laws, using records retention schedules developed for you by IARA. There are 3 reasons why every office in Indiana government needs an effective records management program. The first one is to perform its legal mandates and responsibilities. The second is to minimize the cost of record storage. And the third is to assure public access to the documentary evidence of government. And then you also have 3 partners in your county local records management. You have us at IARA. You have your County Commission of Public Records, which I'll talk about later on, and then you as the records custodian. So just be aware of your partners and reach out when you need help with your records management. So what is a record and what's not? So at the heart of records management is the record. We define a record as it's a public government record is any piece of recorded information that is created or received by your office and documents the activities of your office, no matter what media it's recorded on or what format it's recorded in. A public government record is based on the type of information, not the media or format. So when I say media or format, media is the physical storage object or type of container. So if your record is on paper, paper is the media format. If it's on microfilm, CD, those are the different medias. And then format is how the information is arranged. So if it's arranged on Microsoft Word or within a PDF or TIFF, that's the format. So like I said, it doesn't matter the media or format. The record is based on the type of information. And so now that I've explained what a record is, I feel like I should also explain what a non-record is. A non-record is any piece of recorded information you might have in your government office that does not document the activities of your office or is a duplicate of information that is a public record. So sometimes you'll have questions related to records that are non-records, and just let me know and I can help clarify that. Along with record and non-record, there are the copy of record and then there are duplicates. So when you're dealing with duplicates, whether they're in the same format as the original or a different format, you'll need to determine which version is the copy of record, with all other versions being a duplicate. If the information is the same, you get to decide which version that is. The copy of record does not need to be the original. It doesn't even need to remain the same copy over the lifetime of the record. If you duplicate a paper record in microfilm format, you might decide that the microfilm is now the copy of record and destroy the paper originals. The copy of record is whichever version of the information your office currently uses to fulfill the legal retention requirements for that type of information. As long as the information is an authentic duplicate and the format and media meet IARA standards, then any version of the information can be the copy of record. So, electronic records. Electronic records are any records created, maintained, altered, or deleted in a digital format. These records are subject to the same record-keeping requirements as paper records. So again, it doesn't matter the media or format, just the type of information. So, however, the complexities of media and format require agencies to think ahead and incorporate records retention requirements within record-keeping systems when they're being designed. Office holders and administrators must work with their IT staff to communicate retention policies for electronic records to their office's employees and take the steps necessary to ensure compliance. So like I said, policies 20-01 and 20-02, these are two electronic records policies. 20-01, its purpose is to ensure electronic records are retained in a trustworthy, accessible, and appropriate manner. And 20-02, its purpose is to establish consistent standards for the creation and maintenance of public electronic records. And then the electronic records storage and file management best practices. This is technically still in draft form, so you won't find it on our website yet, but if you would like a copy, you can contact Megan Fukunaga, who's our Deputy Director of Electronic Records Program. And then I just have some advice from the Electronic Records Program. In a nutshell, give files and folders descriptive names, devote time to cleaning and organizing file storage locations, whether they're in the cloud or not, keep personal items to a bare minimum, know what your responsibilities are for maintaining files over the long term, and understand which file formats will be the best fit. And then I briefly wanted to mention the handbook I talked about earlier. There's a whole section, pages 22 through 26, that talk about electronic records. So it's another avenue for you there. So records retention is a practice by which organizations maintain records for a set length of time and then employ a system of actions to either redirect, store, or dispose of them. Why is records retention important? Good records retention prevents audit findings and possibly prevents damages in a lawsuit. And important records should be available and easily accessible when needed. Retention schedules tell us how long the law says that we need to keep the various categories of records and documents we create or receive in Indiana government, and what to do with them after that. The name we use for those categories is record series, and I'll go into that further in the next slide. So retention schedules are lists of record series. Each retention schedule contains all of the record series that apply to a specific government entity or to a broad category of government. Indiana government records are covered by 5 types of retention schedules. You don't need to worry about the first 2, the state or agency specific. You will be using mostly the second, or the number 3 and 4, county, local, and office specific. But I did want to briefly mention that the county local retention schedule is a list of very common record series that may be created or received by any Indiana local government unit. So offices at the county, municipal, and other local level. So that's just a general retention schedule. And then for your office specific, those are lists of record series that may be created or received by all county or local offices of a certain type. So like all county clerks have their own office specific retention schedule, all public libraries have their own, etc. And then the 5th retention schedule is that judicial retention schedule. Those cover records of the Indiana Supreme and Appellate Courts and related entities. And they are published in the Indiana Rules of Court under Administrative Rule 7. IARA does not have jurisdiction over the judicial retention schedule. That is through the Indiana Judiciary. And if you, for some reason, have court records, you will talk to Tom Jones. He's your main contact for that. But as a public library, hopefully you don't have to deal with that very often. And then lastly, I just want to say that retention schedules are always being updated and made better for your office and or agency. So let's talk about record series. So record series are records that share the same topic, legal requirements, and retention instructions that are grouped together under a single record series. So each record series contains, and I've got an example for you there from the county clerk's retention schedule. So each record series contains a record series number, which is a unique identification number assigned when the series is first created. There's also the title and description. It is a formal name for the category of records and a brief description of the subject or program that the records have in common, specific forms and reports that may be included, and any legal codes that affect confidentiality or retention periods. And then each record series also has a retention period and disposition instructions. It's the where, in what format, and how long the records are to be maintained, and what happens at the end of that period. So it might be destruction of records that are no longer useful, or transfer to the Indiana State Archives for records of historical value. Okay, so one of the things on the record series is the retention period, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Retention periods are the details on what the government office must do with the scheduled records. The instructions under the retention schedule are written as briefly and straightforward as possible so that the records custodian, you, can understand what they need to do to fulfill their legal requirements towards the records, and that no records are accidentally disposed of improperly or too soon. These instructions may include format conversion instructions, information on how long the records need to remain, and what finally happens to your records after their retention period is over. So format conversion instructions, whether and when to microfilm original paper records. Microfilming records is almost always optional and thus won't be mentioned in most retention and disposition instructions, but you will see it for records that have been designated as critical. So as you can see, the example I gave you, the retention period is pretty simple. It's to destroy 3 years after expiration of license. So like I said, with the retention schedules, you have your office-specific retention schedule, the public libraries, or LIB for short. As a county local agency, you will mainly use this office-specific retention schedule and then the county local general retention schedule. When looking for a record series, begin with your office-specific and then turn to the gen. If you don't find it on the office-specific and you don't find it on the gen, reach out to me and I can help you find the correct record series. And that's just an example of what your public library's retention schedule, the front page, looks like. And this is an example of the county local general retention schedule, or the GEN. This schedule contains broad and common record series that can apply to all units of county or local government. These record series should be only used, however, when it isn't applicable, if there isn't an applicable record series on your office specific on the library schedule. So some of those categories on the general are administrative, accounting and finance, personnel. These are things that can be applied generally to all county local agencies. And then I briefly wanted to mention that there are other county and local retention schedules out there that you probably won't use, but just making you aware. The auditor, the clerk, coroner, the public safety agencies, which is for like EMTs, firefighters, police, and some other local schedules. There's one for cities and towns. Special districts is actually going to be deactivated soon and incorporated into the general schedule. So just be aware of that. There's the educational institutions, which is for all K through 12 schools. And then, so these are the two forms that you are most commonly going to use as public libraries. It's the SF State Form 44905, Notice of Destruction, or what I call NOD for short. And then there's the State Form SF 30505, or PR1. The Notice of Destruction form is for, its official title is Notice of Destruction of County Local Government Records in accordance with an approved retention schedule. And the PR1 is Request for Exception to County Local Retention Schedule or Permission to Dispose of Non-Scheduled County Local Public Records. So you will most likely be using the NOD more than the PR1 because you have an office specific for libraries. Most of your records should be on there. If they're not, they're on the general, but sometimes there's an oddball record that's not scheduled. And that's when you would fill out the PR1. But let me talk about the Notice of Destruction a little bit more. So this form is to be used only for documenting the destruction of records as scheduled on an approved county local retention schedule. I've got an example there, Gen 1010. let's say you have revenue receipts from 2000 to 2010. That retention, that Gen 1010 says to destroy or delete after 6 years and after receipt of a State Board of Accounts audit report. So you've got records from 2000 to 2010. It's been 6 years since those that you have to maintain them, so you can fill out the notice of destruction. You'll fill out the contact information, the record series information, which is Gen 1010, and then you'll submit it to IARA. The NOD forms are approved by IARA, whereas the PR1 is approved by your county commission. So you submit it to IARA, then you wait 30 days. The 30 days gives us at IARA time to double check and approve your form. So if you do not hear from us in 30 days, that is your approval that there was nothing wrong with your form. I did not need to contact you. And after the 30 days, you can go ahead and destroy your records. The PR1 is slightly different. You won't, like I said, you probably won't use it as much, but occasionally you will. So this is a form for permission to destroy non-scheduled records or to transfer the only copy of a public record. So that's really when you might actually use it, is to transfer scheduled records to the state archives or to a local historical entity. And then lastly, I just wanted to go over the County Commission of Public Records. They receive and process records disposition notices and requests, so the NOD and the PR1, from governmental offices in your county by meeting at least once per calendar year. We encourage the commissions to meet more often than that, just so the localities and offices they serve can dispose of their records in a timely manner. But according to Indiana code, it's just once a year. They must have a quorum. The meetings are open to the public. There is a secretary, and if you need to know who your secretary is, let me know. I have a list. And then they can basically just also help you. They're one of your partners, so just be aware of that. Lastly, I wanted to reiterate that the County Local Records Custodian Handbook is a great resource for you. It replaces two older policies, so just be aware of that. And then we do have some online tutorials if you need extra help on records management. And there's my contact information, and I will switch over to Vicki and let her take over. Let me just switch PowerPoints real quick. All right, Vicki, you can take over.
Hi, I'm Vicki, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about how the State Archives Division can help you in your library. And I thought I would start by just kind of going over what the Archives does. We are responsible as the repository for state government records for records from the Executive Division, which would include governors. We have one of the largest governors collections there are. We have something for every governor in Indiana, whether it's just a couple of pieces of paper in a folder for some of the earlier governors, all the way up to one of the largest Civil War collections with Governor Morton. And then a terrific collection of records from Governor McNutt's era in the Depression, which covers all kinds of topics that people would find fascinating, and includes many, different letters from constituents at the time. We also maintain, of course, the legislative records. This includes the original acts and laws for Indiana, all the way up to the present time. At the end of every legislative session, we receive a transfer of the the new records, and the judicial. We have a tremendous collection of Supreme Court records. And a lot of times people will think, well, what will I need with a Supreme Court record? That's going to be, some sort of dry type of case or something like that. But the Supreme Court hears everything from divorces to murder to appeals of all types. So it's a very terrific, rich collection to pull from. We also, as Amy was telling you, maintain county records, and she's gone over a lot of that with you. But we do have a large collection of county records, something from all 92 counties. However, some counties more so than others, so it can vary. There's no definite answer for what the archives might have per county. You kind of have to check that from on a county by county basis. And I'll show you a little bit how you can do that in a few minutes. So who uses the archives? On a daily basis, the general public contacts us throughout the day. Probably our most important record, for your everyday citizen are the military DD-214s. These records help them obtain financing, medical benefits, burial benefits. They also aid the widow in receiving some of those same benefits too. We also maintain transcripts for closed nursing schools, and that is probably our second most requested item. Actually, it's probably our first most requested item over the DD-214s right now. Particularly at the time of the year when everyone is going back to school or looking for new positions. We maintain records of state schools and, of course, the Department of Corrections and aerial photographs too. Academic people come to us for social history. We have very rich histories of state institutions and state schools, and also historical records. Governor's papers, Secretary of State, and Attorney Generals are usually my go-to collections if you can't find something where you think it ought to be involving a state agency. They will typically be copied, at least one of those agencies, on something, and it will often solve many little mysteries of hidden, I don't want to say hidden records, but often mislaid records. And of course, genealogists come to us for all of these types of records, primarily the military, land, and naturalizations, but also the state institution records. And I'll show you a bit more about that here in just a second. So how do you access these sources? Where do you start? The best place is on our website, and I'm going to show you some things with our website right now, but they're all going to be getting tweaked a little bit over the next few days. So, in few weeks. So you might notice some changes when you visit the site. But if you go to our main page, in.gov/IARA for Indiana Archives and Records Administration, and then you want to follow the link to the services for the public. You can see with the little icons there, it breaks it up by subject, but you can also link there to the digital archives and also the online catalog. And that's where you'll see some of the main changes. If you have used this page, the digital classroom, in the past, this will be disappearing in the very near future, but all that information will, we're going to guarantee first that it's on the subject-oriented pages. The digital archives is in transition right now, and over the next few weeks, you're going to see it change from this appearance. And also, if you note the collections on the upper right-hand side, there are only 6 different collections there. In the next few weeks, it's going to change. This is a little rough looking just yet, but you'll see that we're going to add many more categories. These things are going to be broken up into collection titles that actually make more sense for what they are. And also will be updated with many, many more records, particularly naturalizations and veterans' grave registrations. The Research Indiana Index will be the new title of the digital archives. It's a bit more descriptively accurate for what we do, because our digital archives didn't really contain many digital images, but it is more of an index. And this index has been created by our volunteers who have gone through many of our record collections for the last 25 years, indexing and making these records more accessible to the general public. We can now find a naturalization record, within minutes by looking in a database, where at one time you had to go into the basement down in the state library when we were still there, pull the books out and search through every book for hours at a time to do each request. So we really, really appreciate all their hard work and efforts that they've put into this. And as you can see, I'll just give you a few examples here of the types of categories and what you might find in those. The court records for now will contain records mostly from Marion County and Posey County, as well as the Vigo County coroner's inquest, which actually will be moved to a separate category for coroner's records. But we also have territorial court order books and case files. So some very, very early, citizens of Indiana are going to appear here even before Indiana became an official state. The Supreme Court records, as I say, are just a vast, rich collection for both genealogists and historical researchers. You can find everything from divorces, as I said earlier, to murder cases in here, also slavery cases, just a wide variety, Native American land cases. It's just really a wonderful collection, to pursue. And thanks to the volunteers and some staff members, former staff members, this collection has been made more accessible. You can see on the left-hand side, all those little cases that were folded up and wrapped up in butcher paper have now been cleaned, flattened, and folded, as well as put into the index so that they are now discoverable. We also have a new category called children, and this covers basically everything that you can think of regarding children, be it foster care, orphanages, foster parent applications, and my favorite collection, the foster care files. These are a combination of files from both the Children's Home Society and the Board of State Charities Child Saving Department. They range from 1892 to 1910, thereabouts. They tend to drift off from there. And they will include everything from maybe just, some files might have one slip of paper, one little report, or the child's name, and maybe where they were placed, to entire files of documentation, letters, correspondence from family members trying to find the children. It's just a very, very informative collection. Sometimes you will even find court-ordered adoption papers in these files. Public lands, just kind of wanted to, if you're helping a patron, look for public land information, a good place to start is on our digital archives. This right now has 4 of the 7 land offices indexed and online and available to search for. The thing to keep in mind with this is that it works in combination with the Bureau of Land Management's website. So people will often go to the Bureau of Land Management and they'll get the patent and they think, oh, I've got the whole record. But that patent only gives you the date that patent was issued. It won't tell you the whole story. That person might have been on the land anywhere from a year to 2 or 10. And I have seen, at worst cases, 100 years earlier. The patent was just never issued until much later, because they would have to, once they paid for the land, send all that information to the Bureau of Land Management, and then wait for up until Governor, or actually President Van Buren's time. They would have to wait for the president to actually sign the patent. After his time, and with all the land purchases, Van Buren said no. this isn't possible anymore. So the secretary started taking over the signatures at that time. And this is what one of those patents looks like. It is a nice document to have, and you can download that for free from the Bureau of Land Management. But you do need that rest of that story. When did that land actually get purchased? As I said, it will place the pioneer on the land several years earlier at the least. The Department of Correction covers the state prisons, also the boys' school, girls' school, women's prison, and Indiana life prisoners. Depending upon the institution and the time that the person was incarcerated, you will find everything from just an admission book entry to possibly mugshots or entire what we call prison packets. And in the case of the state prison in Michigan City, there are often several types of packets. And unfortunately, in the past, many of these packets were sampled, which means that only say every 20th or every 50th one was kept. And so we can check that for you. We may not have a packet for everyone, but if you're looking for, genealogy information or just the rest of the story about that ancestor who was incarcerated, this will help you find that information. Under professions category, we have moved not only the Marion County public employees, which you can see an example of here, but also records of optometrists and pharmacists and the Marion County Bar Association. The example of this card is a Marion County employee who was a police officer, and these cards have been digitized and are available on digitalnd.org through the Marion County Public Library. So you can now go to that site and just download the entire card, which usually includes an image of the person, either the policeman or the firefighter, and other types of public employees will be featured there too. Early military records are part of the military collection, and I just sort of separated this from the rest because it does include a combination of periods: the early militia, the War of 1812, Battle of Tippecanoe, the Black Hawk War, and starts recording some of the Mexican War and Civil War officers. But the majority of the other periods of war are also featured in this index. Of course, the Civil War, the Indiana Militia, Spanish-American War, and so on. A couple of the collections that I'd really like to point out to you, though, are the Book of Merit and the Gold Star Honor Roll for World War I. Many of your libraries will have a copy of those books on your shelf, and you'll be able to look up a soldier, but you'll only see a small headshot and perhaps a brief description of that soldier's service. Those books were created when the Historical Bureau collected all of this information from the families. So what we have here are entire folders of information, letters, forms, and often other pictures that the family members sent in. And it's just a wonderful resource for a World War I soldier. And as well, on our From the Page, which is sort of an online volunteering platform, you can go and look up all of the World War I service cards now. You can just search by name and pull up their service card. This was, again, done by volunteers through our home program. And if you're looking for something to do, I'll just kind of give you a hint that we're always changing projects here. And you can select a particular group of records that you would like to index and have at it almost immediately. This makes the information readily available for everyone. Veterans and families. We have one of the largest collections of World War II records. Korea and Vietnam, um, based upon Indiana state bonuses that were issued. And fortunately, we do have these records for soldiers and their families because there was a huge fire. You've probably heard of this in St. Louis in the early 70s, which destroyed most of their records there. Fortunately, Indiana had given these bonuses, and the soldiers would send in a copy of their DD-214 along with their application to receive their bonus. All of those DD-214s were kept, and frequently we will send copies of those to the National Personnel Record Center in St. Louis, or we're able to provide that to the family members directly or to funeral homes, which can really, really help speed up access to those military records. And then, of course, the military benefits that they're receiving, particularly now during the pandemic when St. Louis is a 500,000 record requests behind at the moment. We also have veteran grave registrations. All of the veteran grave counties that we have, 53 out of 92 counties that were done by the WPA, have now been transcribed and will be available as soon as the new page, the new Research Indiana Index, is visible online. These include index cards for the soldier, for the veteran, and as well as cemetery list. And frequently we have, not shown here, cemetery maps that indicate where the soldiers are buried. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover everybody in the cemetery, but it will at least put you in the right direction if you're looking for the burial place of a particular veteran. We have naturalization records. For many counties, we have over 60 now indexed and online. That's not too bad out of 92 counties. And also the Supreme Court for Marion County, we do have those indexed as well. At the county level, people could be naturalized in any court up until about 1907, and then it became the duty of the actual county courts to just take over doing that. And then finally, by the late 30s and early 50s, will be the extent of when counties are actually doing naturalizations, and it's all finally transitioned to the federal government. That ranges differently from county to county, but you can check this index to see if you can find whoever you're looking for either yourself or your patrons. And then send an inquiry to us and we can get those copies made for you. Also, I wanted to point out another very useful tool. Sometimes you're not going to find everything that you're looking for, in the Research Indiana Index, but we do have the Research Indiana Catalog. This is an active catalog that's always being updated, and as those updates are made, they are visible online. So more information, some of the collections that you're going to find here might not have as much descriptive information as others, but that is, as I say, continually being updated, and it will just constantly be improving. But this will tell you what we do have here in our collections for the Indiana State Archives. And you may or may not be able to look directly for a record for an individual, but it will at least put you in the right place to begin looking. Some of the examples that that are here are from Hamilton County, and these are just a few results just from searching for Hamilton County. They range from from the correspondence and also township appointments. It could be court records, county assistance program records, oaths of office, that type of thing. And this will again vary from county to county. And as I say, it's just continually improving and having more information added to it. So I encourage you to look at this if you're not finding what you're looking for, or send us an email and we will help you with it as well. I wanted to talk just for a moment about our genealogy partners, where you can find a lot of the records. We work with both Ancestry and Family Search. There are vital records for birth records beginning in 1907. This is when the state took over. Birth records actually began in 1882, as well as death records from 1900 forward. Death records end at 2010, but birth records end much earlier. We have to stop those for confidentiality reasons in 1940, though we will be able to do an update soon on those. Just because of the period of time for confidentiality is classified as 75 years for birth records. Also, on Ancestry, they have an excellent collection of Indiana marriage records, mostly ranging from 1960 to 2011. However, they do work with Family Search and are taking advantage of some of their indexing to show you earlier marriage records as well. There's just a couple of examples of birth and death records that you can pull off of Ancestry. A lot of times patrons won't have access to Ancestry, and they can just email us, or if you have access to it in your library, you can go on to Ancestry and help them download both these birth and death records, as well as the marriage records too. As I said, Ancestry does work with the Family Search indexes as well, and will frequently lead you over to Family Search and bring up that entire record for you there. It's an example of just a marriage application that you can pull up from Family Search by going through Ancestry, or just going directly to Family Search. There are a couple ways to search for Indiana records on Family Search, and one of those would be to go directly into the Indiana records through the, I'm trying to see what they're calling that there, and the drop-down list at the top. Now that will pull up a list of records. You can do phone calls. That will pull up a list of records that, sorry for the interruption there, that will show you what's been indexed and has images for Indiana, but it's not going to be a complete list. The real way to get to these records, 5 minutes, okay, just about. Unfortunately, this seems to have frozen. Hang on just 1 second. Okay, there we go. I think that probably made it active again. The best way to look for what Indiana has, particularly if you're looking for county-specific records, is to go to the catalog search, pull that down, enter Indiana and the county that you're looking for, and that will bring you up with an entire list. Each of these open up into other categories. And it'll show you what's available for probate records, what's available for vital records, or any other types of records in your county. And when you open those, you can often bring up digital images that go along with it. Now, you might be noticing a little subliminal programming message here at the bottom of each of these slides that say, encourage your county clerk to make these records accessible. All of these records can be searched on Family Search, but many of them can only be searched if you are in a Family Search affiliate partnership, like the state library or like the state archives, and other areas around, Indiana. Your library itself may be a genealogy partner there, and you might not have noticed that. You can bring up these records, or you might not have realized that when your patron goes home, they're not going to be able to access that record. These are all based upon the contracts that were made with GSU, with each individual county, and all a county has to do to make those records active online and available from home is to change the contract a little bit. And GSU would be glad to help them do that and make them more accessible. And that is basically the end of. Okay, I'll send this back to Amy then.
This was amazing. Thank you so much to Vicki and Amy. This has been tremendous amount of information. You all do so much over there. We did have a question earlier. So Diana asked, when you say you maintain transcripts of state schools, do you mean that you have old college transcripts?
No, actually, we don't. Just nursing schools.
Okay.
We do have some records for state schools, such as the deaf school, blind school, and the Soldiers and Sailors Children's Home, Morton Memorial. But beyond that, it's typically only nursing schools, professional licensing type of secondary education, not secondary, but proprietary education.
Okay.
So,
Oh, no. I will send you all the link to the LEU. I thought I made sure that worked before I started today, but okay. Sorry about that. Maybe I'll redo the link and I'm going to send it to everybody. And I know we've got like 2 minutes left. I could maybe add to that link. If you have questions for Amy and Vicki, I can compile those, have them sent to them, and then I can give you all the answers.
And I'll put 2 emails in the chat. I'll put the county one and the archives one. If you have any questions for me or Vicki,
Okay.
you can reach us at those 2 emails.
Okay. And I also put my email and also your other emails. So I tried to keep up with you with the links you were sharing, but you had so many things I wasn't able to, but
I
all
know
right.
it was a lot of information.
That's okay. Well, thank you very much. We're going to probably end it in about a minute. So, oh, we'll have some of the LEU link work for you. Okay. Well, let me know if you can't get that link to work. Send it to me again, and it's pnewcomb@library.in.gov. So at this point, I want to say, oh, we have one more question. Is there a way to search by county to find out exactly what might be available that way?
for the county search or through the state archives? Catalog. Both, you can, yes.
Oh, I'm
The
having a
answer is yes. You can either search in the catalog, you can definitely put in the county name and it will bring up everything from that county. But you may not want to do it that way. It might get a little overwhelming depending on what your county has sent here previously. Also, I should note that if it's been sent to the record center, I don't think it's going to pull up in that version of the catalog if it's just there for temporary storage. But it will only pull up what's in the archives portion of IARA.
Okay. All right. I know we probably had a little bit of trouble hearing you. We will go ahead and I'll get the few questions I have and we'll have you guys maybe answer it. Just type it up the answer and send it to me and I'll send it out. Is there a way to get a list of the links in the webinar? Yeah, I can put that together easily since I did put a lot in the chat, and I'll get those out to you all. Okay, well, at this point, I think we're going to say thanks again to Vicki and Amy, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.